Hi ladies, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nikki, and if you are new around here, I am a third-year homeschooling mom to 5 little boys. In today's video, I am chatting all about planning a unit study. As I mentioned, I think in a couple videos back, and I've mentioned it a couple times, I haven't fully decided on what we are doing as far as curriculum goes for next year. But one of the things that I want to do more of, that I need to do more of, is more unit studies. Typically, I do a handful throughout the school year. This year, we only did 2. And so next year, I'm planning on doing many more of those. The reason I love unit studies so much is because we use them in lieu of a history curriculum, in lieu of science, geography, all of those separate curriculums. I fit under the umbrella of unit studies. And it gives us an opportunity to deep dive into one particular topic or person or a subject, something of that nature. We get to dive deep and really get into the nitty-gritty of whatever we're studying. So this year we did 2 unit studies. We did oceans and we did space. And those are 2 that we have actually done a couple years in a row, but both times the boys loved them and they've learned more things each time we've done them. So for next year, I'm starting to think okay, what kind of unit studies are we gonna do next year? And is there a different type of unit study that we can do? And I had an idea for one way that we can do a unit study next year, a little bit differently than how we have done it in the past. But before we get to next year and before I plan all of this stuff out, I actually wanted to try it this year and just try one since we're near the end of the school year, kind of as a test run to see how it goes, how it is to plan it, how the boys like it, if they enjoy it, and if it's something that I can easily do with all of them. And when I say all of them, I mean my 3 older boys, because next year my middle son will be doing a lot more with us since he will be in preschool as he is this year. Next year he'll be going on 5 years old, and so I really want to get him more involved with us. And one way that has made it really easy to involve him and even my toddler is doing unit studies. One of the most easiest fun ways to involve your little ones is when you do any family studies. Our Easter unit was a really good example of how everyone can be involved and they're all learning the same thing but in a different way, which is why I love unit studies. So in this video, I wanted to talk about the unit study that I want to try out to see if it's something that we can use for next year, and show you how I plan for a unit study. All right, so like I said, I love doing unit studies because we can include all of these different subjects under one umbrella, under one topic. We can do science and geography and history, and of course there's reading and writing involved too. So all of those things fall underneath the unit study umbrella, which is why I love doing them, especially because my kids are so young still. I haven't felt a need to include a formal curriculum of any of those things, with the exception of science. We have done the good and the beautiful science, but that even still I have used kind of as a unit study, and I have added in other things to make it a full rounded unit study, because again, it's just an easy way to study one topic and have all of these other things that we can include as a part of it. So my idea for next year to do as unit studies, instead of picking a topic, I wanted to try the Who Was books and do a unit study under the Who Was books. If you know of Jessica from the Waldock Way, I will link her YouTube and her Instagram down below. She's wonderful, and she has lots of resources on her page. But what I really love is that she has these wonderful Who Was printables that she sells on her site. And it is like the backbone of a really good unit study, and there's so many things that you can plug in to make it a full rounded, big, beefy unit study. So my idea for next year that I want to try out is to take one of her units for the Who Was books and plug in different things that we can do for science and geography and history. Some of that will be included in her printables that she sells, but some of it I can plug in as I see fit, and the other things that we can do while we are studying someone. So the first one that I wanted to try is Steve Irwin. I'm gonna put a picture of his book right here. I haven't gotten this yet. I was going to get this from the library, but after looking it up on Amazon, it's inexpensive, and I figure it might just be something that we like to have around. So I'm going to buy a few of them, but they're relatively inexpensive as far as books go. So we're gonna do this one first, Who Was Steve Irwin. And I wanted to do him first because I thought, what a great way to really, I mean, such a simple way to include science in there, and zoology and geography and history. I wanted to try studying his biography first and to see how that goes. So let's get to planning. So what I'm gonna do is, I have my notebook here. This is actually my record keeping notebook. All right, so I am making a list of things that I am going to need as far as books and printables and resources that we will need for this unit. Now, one thing that is really, really cool about Jessica's Who Was units is she actually includes a page that links to YouTube videos and to a Pinterest board. I'm gonna show you next. So this page is the one that I was talking about. It's super helpful because she already has a few books that you can use as read alouds. She has the QR codes and the links for YouTube playlists, a Pinterest board. She has videos and games and other resources that you can use to go alongside the unit that she already has compiled for you. So the first thing that I do is find all of the picture books that I want to go along with our unit study. And these will be not only just for reading aloud, but also we use them as resources as we're kind of going through the other things, as we're looking up things about the geography, history, and science. I like to have lots of picture books on hand to reference. First thing that I do is I find read aloud. So I'm gonna go on here and type in on Pinterest. I'm on Pinterest right now. So I start in the Pinterest board that coincides with the Who Was printable from Waldock Way, and I see all of the crafts and the experiments listed here. Next, I go into Pinterest and I search for Steve Irwin read alouds. I scroll a little bit and I don't see a ton on here. So my next stop is to go to my library network page, and this connects to my local library network. I hunt for Steve Irwin and see what I can find, and it looks like there are a couple books that I can put on hold to go along with our read aloud biography of him. I do go ahead and put another copy of the Who Was book on hold So if the boys want to look at it and flip through it while I'm reading it, then we have 2 copies on hand. All right, so read alouds. I am not going to list all of them out. I'm just going to write Pinterest board and library pickups. So I have made my Pinterest board and I have made all of the books. I put all of them on hold for a library pickup. So I will go on Pinterest and I will type in like specifically what I'm looking for. So I am looking for Australia, which I already typed it in, Australia picture books. And this is where Pinterest is a gold mine. You can find book lists for pretty much anything on Pinterest. Like someone, a blogger out there, has already done the work for you and it is amazing. So I will go on here, and so I'm picking Australia because obviously that is our geography portion, and so I'm going to try to find picture books to go along with our geography portion, that picture books that are set in Australia. It doesn't have to be necessarily about Australia, but books that take place in Australia, and of course there will be some geography and history built into those picture books as well. These are all books by Australian authors, and we actually have a couple of these. Like this one, we have this one, so I will pull this one out and I'm going to write it down right here. Australian authors. I continue to search Pinterest for books to add to my library pickup, books that we can use for science, books that we can use for history and geography of Australia and the environment there. And I just go back and forth between Pinterest and my library page. So I don't do book hauls on this channel because I don't actually buy a ton of books, and I feel like I am not the norm as far as like YouTubers and YouTubers who homeschool, because I feel like a lot of homeschoolers who do YouTube and Instagram buy a lot of books, and that's great. I don't do that. I use our library for pretty much everything. If we want a specific book, or we are studying a certain topic, or we just want some like extra resources, my first go-to is the library. Our library is amazing, and I feel like it is such an underutilized resource, and it is free to us. Your tax dollars go to your library. Use your library. It's free. And it's so much more user-friendly these days because most libraries have this library network system where not only can you reserve your books online, but you can also pick them up by reserving them online. Like you will go to the library, they will have the stack of books that you have put on hold waiting for you. You don't have to go searching through the shelves to find the books that you're looking for. And what's really cool is if your library doesn't have the book that you're looking for, a lot of times your library is a part of a network of libraries in your area, and if another local library has it, they will bring that book from that library to yours for you to borrow. It is amazing. So if for whatever reason our library doesn't have the book, I can almost always put it on hold because another library has it. So if you're not using your library, if you're not using a local library, I highly recommend doing that because it is a free to you resource and it is just chock full of good stuff. All right, so I have my read alouds picked out and I have them reserved at the library. The next thing that I had to figure out was what to include for science. And for science, Jessica from Waldock Way already has a science experiment on the Pinterest board for this unit, so we will do that. And I wanted to include something else to beef it up a little bit more so we can consider it a science section. And so for science, I thought we could study the coral reef, which is perfect because Steve Irwin is from Australia and Australia has the coral reef. So I already put some books on hold for that. So a lot of our unit studies are derived from books and from picture books. Obviously, I mean, there is just no greater resource than reading from our book. So for geography, we will obviously be talking about Australia, and that is where the Australia picture books will come in, and then some of just the informative books that I put on hold, we will use that to talk about where is Australia, what is the terrain like, what is the weather like there, and then maybe a couple other little tidbits about like their flag and like their currency and things like that. That can kind of all be lumped into geography and history. And then of course for history, we'll be using the biography of Steve Irwin, and that is history. For art, Jessica has a couple things on her Pinterest board that I will pull from, and then I also found a couple other things that we will do. So we will likely do a little craft of a gator or a croc that she has linked in there, and then my boys love to watercolor, so we will probably do a portrait of Steve Irwin in watercolor, and possibly even do a watercolor of Australia. So I have all of my materials planned and ready. I will just have to go pick up our library books. I have everything printed out and ready for our unit study. So now, how do I execute? So what we will do is first we will read through the book, and I will likely include that in our morning time when they're eating breakfast, and shortly after I will just put it into our morning basket and we will read through it. It'll probably take us 2 or 3 days. Those books are very short. They're short chapters, so it won't take us super long. I expect this unit study to take a couple of weeks time. So first we will read through the Who Was book. Then we will go right into going through the printables from Waldock Way. Her printables are awesome, and it includes everything from copy work to a timeline of whoever you're studying. It also includes a biography sheet. We used her inauguration Who Was, and it was wonderful. So I had a little bit of an idea of what to expect when I got this. So we will be using the biography page, and we will be using the map of Steve Irwin's life, using the timeline, and this I will include as one of their art projects. And it is to draw your own zoo. I probably will not do the copy work, simply because when I do copy work, I don't have them do any other writing for the day, and right now we don't need any more writing, so I will probably skip the copy work. But one thing that I will have them do while I am reading aloud the biography, and possibly when I'm reading through some of the other books, I will have them work on this coloring sheet. If you know anything about reading aloud to kids, you know that giving them something to do with their hands is especially useful. They take a lot more in when their hands are busy. So I will have this ready for them in the morning with their their colored pencils and their crayons, so that they can color while I am reading aloud the Who Was book. So after we read through the whole book, we will go through those printables, and that's when we will be sourcing the picture books that I have gotten from the library for all of that information, to fill out his biography, to look up his timeline. Of course, all of that stuff is in the Who Was book, but I like to use other books as resources. And this is something that I this is a skill that I want to establish with them, that using lots of different resources to find the information you're looking for is a very valuable skill that they will use forever and ever. And I especially think of this when they go to college, because when they're in college, they're going to be writing a lot of research papers and they're going to have to cite lots of different sources. And so for us, I like to help them build the skill of using different books and different resources to find the information. So of course we can get all of it out of the one book, but again, I want to show them that there are other resources that has the same information, and sometimes it provides more information and it provides it in a different or a better way. So after we go through the printables, then we will dive into the other subjects. So one day we will do the science, so we will do our little experiment and we will go through the coral reef books. The next day we will talk about the geography of Australia, and that's when we will also pull out the map of the printable that is included in the Who Was book. And we will go through what is Australia like, where is it located, the terrain, and all those things. And then after we do the geography, the next day we will do the history of Steve Irwin, and that is when we will specifically use this sheet, the timeline of his life, and we will save that for our history day to kind of go through the history of his life and what that looked like. And then for our final day, we will use our arts and crafts. So like I said, this will take us a couple of weeks to go through. We're not going to do this every day, probably 3 days a week. So I anticipate reading aloud the book the first few days, and then we will jump right into going through the printables. The following week, we will talk about that. We will do the science on one day, we will do geography the second day, and history. And on the final day, we will do an art project. So that is it. That is how I am planning this unit study. I really utilize our library, and I cannot emphasize that enough. I love using books and picture books to connect my kids to lots of information. It is the best way for them to connect with it when you're reading aloud, and especially when you're reading through picture books. That is how I have planned this unit study. I have high hopes, and I think that it's going to be really fun, and I'm hopeful that this is what we will do all of next year to get in all of those extra subjects in lieu of formal history and science curriculums. If you have any questions about how I planned or what I planned, I would love to hear them down below, and I will be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a big old thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.
The world could fall down, it's gonna be okay.